What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, I'm very happy to be joined by Yusuf of YKReviews, as well as my buddy Tajaya of Blacktastic Media. It's been quite some time since I've had Blacktastic on. I was trying to work through a bunch of series that I was already kind of working on, and I knew I had to have Blacktastic on as soon as I started doing these live stream reviews. And I tried to have him on last week. It didn't work out so much for Black Panther, but super happy to have him here for Infinity War. And Yusuf, first time here joining me on the channel. He's been watching my videos. I've been watching his. Really good YouTuber. Both of them have fantastic movie-related content, TV-related content over on their channel. Of course, Blacktastic Media just recently released his latest short film, or his latest film, known as The Lookout. Definitely go give that a look for sure. I was actually just checked it out this morning. I was a little late to the party, but was very happy with what I saw. Blacktastic consistently growing in the filmmaking world. But yeah, we're continuing on now with my MCU reviews as I cover a bunch that I just never covered because they came out before I started a YouTube channel. And yeah, it was one of those things where I just wanted to go back and cover some of these and just have fun discussing them with people. So Blacktastic, I'll throw it off to you first. Infinity War. It was a huge moment, not only for comic book movies, but for cinema in general. I mean, I remember the hype around this film and Endgame was unreal. What can you tell me about what it was like for you when the movie was coming out? What did you think about the movie as it came out? And how does it sit with you all these years later?
Well, not really familiar with the comics, but I knew this was a big deal. The title was dope. I really enjoyed the first two Avengers movies by Joss Whedon. I like his style. I like his sensibility. He knows how to write comedy into the action. So I know the Russo brothers had did Captain America Civil War. I'm like, okay, these brothers is dope. So with that going into it, the hype was at a fever pitch because Thanos was going to be featured, and the trailers had me hyped. And if you don't know, my favorite character is the Hulk. So when I seen him running with everybody in the trailer, I'm like, woo, yes. And then I seen the movie, and I was like, the Hulk got his ass whooped. Damn near after the opening credits. And I don't know that much about Thanos. I know he's a big bad dude, but I'm like, can't nobody beat the Hulk. And the madder he gets, the stronger he gets. So I was really, really shocked about that. And now they introduced Spider-Man into the Avengers. And I thought it was cool. I wasn't really sure about him going to space. That was new for me. And I was like, okay, I got to get used to this. But man, after the first 15 minutes, man, my heart was ripped from my chest after they beat the Hulk down. I was like, what? I said, okay, redemption. He's coming back towards the end of the movie, and he's going to whoop that ass. that didn't happen, man. I was like, oh. So the movie was cool. And out of all four Avengers movies, this is my least favorite.
Interesting. All right, that's a really cool, interesting place to start at it. Yeah, I rewatched the film yesterday. Yeah, it's crazy. I will say the thing that bugged me the most, and especially seeing where things have gone, and we're gonna have a segment of this conversation that is about where the MCU is now and what they've done with a lot of these characters. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that the Hulk still hasn't come back to like the Hulk we know. We get Professor Hulk in Endgame, and of course that's kind of still continued on to what we have right now. But yeah, rewatching the film, the thing that bugged me the most, I love the movie. I think it's a lot of fun. It's the way they balance all these characters. The Russo brothers do an incredible job with all these characters and balancing all these different storylines and keeping all these different places like kind of integral, and they kind of tie into one another a lot of times. And the transitions, like there's not a lot of downtime in this movie. It's really straight to business with most of it, which I really genuinely enjoyed. But the Hulk element was definitely something that stood out to me. Just like I feel like they almost wrote that in there to just try to avoid him destroying everybody, too early in the movie. But it does take away from what we would want from a movie like this with the Hulk. Yusuf, what about you, man? Any thoughts on this movie as far as when it was coming out, what the hype was like for you, and how it sits with you all these years later?
Yeah, when it was coming out, I was actually living in the UK, but because of like the things I was going through at that time, I hadn't had a chance to check it out. My work, there's somebody at work back in the UK. They actually knew somebody in the theaters who was giving us like an early midnight screening of the movie. But because of what I was going through, I never had the chance to check it out. So the next day, everybody's like trying to talk about the movie. I'm trying to like put headphones in so that I don't hear anything about the movie, because I was really excited to check it out. But the first time I actually saw it was the day before I went to go see Endgame, because going to the UK, then traveling over to like live in Canada, and it's so much is going on in my life. So watching it for the first time right before Endgame, I really, really had a fun time with the movie. But I had the same issue with the Hulk, and even watching it last night too, same problem. And even like the first opening sequence, when you have the Hulk busting in, fighting Thanos, you're thinking this is going to be like a really fun, entertaining watch, seeing the Hulk do his thing. But what they do to him, I just felt so bad for the actor, that Mark Ruffalo. I felt so bad for all the Hulk fans out there. I just feel like they've done him so dirty. But like, that's the only nitpick and negative I have. But the rest of the movie, for me, is probably the best out of the whole Avengers movies. Like, in terms of all four, even though all four are really, really good, even I still think Age of Ultron is still solid. But Infinity War, definitely with the balance and everything like that, is a great, great movie. But yeah, the Hulk, that was just the weak part of the movie.
Nice. Well, it seems that we all have the similar weakest part of the movie, which makes it easy when talking about our negatives. But I love the contrast of having this be Blacktastic's least favorite Avengers and this being yours. Yeah, I think for me, this sits somewhere in the middle. I think that first Avengers film is just top tier, and what it did for the time. It also I remember what it was like. I had just come out of high school, like literally months before, so it was like, felt like my whole childhood built up to me graduating high school, and then the Avengers came out. It was awesome. And then I think Endgame for me is just kind of my favorite, just because it just has so much closure in so many areas personally. But yeah, overall, going back and watching this movie, one thing that is really stands out is, as I've been doing these the last few weeks, I've watched like a few in succession that were part of that chunk that I hadn't seen, and that included Captain America: Civil War, which was so much fun to go back and rewatch. And Joe and Anthony Russo really just know how to direct action. They know how to direct action, keep it fun, keep it light, have dark, serious tones as well, and be able to like lean onto some heavy subject matter and some actual growth of the characters, but still keep it fun, keep it light, keep the humor there, keep the action very exciting to watch, and everything kind of flows. I find that the pacing of their movies, Winter Soldier, Civil War, and then the two Avengers films, they just flow so well. And like I said, the sequences just transition into one another so well. And there's a big task. I mean, when you look at the poster of this movie, there are dozens of characters. Like the poster is busy. Like if you look at any of the posters for this movie, it is so busy with how many characters they fit on there. But the fact that they were able to accompany that with an actual solid film that doesn't feel like overly bloated and kind of messy, I think in the hands of the wrong writer or director, this could have easily been a miss. But in a world where we have this movie that is filled with a massive ensemble cast, so much going on, it's kind of tough to really narrow down a favorite. So I'll throw it over to you, Blacktastic, first this time. What is your favorite element of this film? Is there like a favorite character that you like to see in the mix? Maybe two characters that are having like a dynamic over the course of the film. What is your favorite element of Infinity War?
Ever since the Avengers were formed, one of my favorite characters never was when I was a child, but from the movie version is Thor. Thor is a blast in these movies, man. And when he's screen, Chris Hemsworth, he steals the show. And his band, with Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., of course, other Chris playing Captain America, man, their chemistry is incredible. But he really stands out, man. His presence, his bulk, and his comedy timing. I didn't know how funny he was until I seen Ghostbusters and stuff later. But I'm like, this dude, it's really funny. And he's probably the most standout character for me in this particular film, and probably also Endgame. But this one, Thor, was kick ass from beginning to end. And the antagonist, man, Thanos lived up to all the buildup throughout the other movies until this point. And, you know, he was the real deal, Holyfield, man. He was quite threatening. And his sense and sensibility while he was doing what he was doing made sense. And great writers know how to make the audience sympathize with the villain or the antagonist. They did a great job with that. So the tug of war of what he was trying to do and set things right, and the Avengers, their biggest task ever. You know, you thought Age of Ultron was a mess. Dude, this was a task. I didn't see how they can do it. And of course, it takes two parts to get through this task. But Thor and Thanos was amazing. When they finally faced off, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, no, I have to agree, man. I mean, Thanos is a huge part of this whole equation that makes it work. I mean, Josh Brolin as the character, top tier in terms of the performance capture that was done there, the vocal like performance that he gives, and so much of Josh Brolin comes through the CGI, which is another big part of this film. You know, rewatching it, there was a couple of moments when they're on Titan that some of the green screen looks a little bit noticeable, but honestly, outside of that, which is fairly minor gripe, the movie looks great. It balances a sense of realism with a comic book aesthetic at the same time. But everything about the film feels darker and grittier. I love the look of all these characters. And yeah, the Thor element, man, going back and rewatching it was so much fun. And when Thor, Rocket, and Groot show up in Wakanda, like the music, the Stormbreaker slicing up all those enemies, him saying, "Bring me Thanos," slamming down. It's got to be one of my favorite little few seconds of movies of all time. Like it gives me chills every time. Rewatching the movie last night, I know everywhere that this is going, but like I was feeling chills. I was feeling like emotional in parts when they're like when Groot is slicing his arm off to make it the handle for Stormbreaker. Like even though I know where everything goes, I found myself like welling up in these moments. You know, I just I think that the music a lot of times, which is another huge part too. The score of this film is top tier, of course, reprising tons of musical beats from all of the other Marvel movies individually. I just love like I was talking about the transitions earlier as well, with things like when the Guardians are introduced, you slowly hear that like 70s music, 70s, 80s music playing in the background, only for it to then go into space. And then it's like perfect. And then later on, when Cap is about to say that he knows somebody who can help, which was, of course, the Wakandans, you just hear a little bit of the drums in the background. And then eventually you see Wakanda. I thought the transitions were so subtle and so cool. And there's so many elements. It's hard to narrow down. I think one of my favorite, though, just to be a little bit different than the Thor dynamic, would have to be the Iron Man Doctor Strange dynamic. I love the fact that they don't really know each other, but they recognize they both know what they're talking about to some degree. So that's why they kind of have this clash of two people who recognize intelligence, but ultimately have their own outlook on it. So that was a lot of fun for me. But Yusuf, what about you? You have a favorite character dynamic in this huge movie?
I think one standout is, as you guys mentioned, Thor, just his presence in the whole movie, and just that scene, as you were saying, Anthony, like him arriving in Wakanda. That, for me, it's one of the most iconic scenes in Marvel history. But I have to shout out the Guardians, because when these movies were first announced, like nobody knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were, and James Gunn did a fantastic job with the movies. So when they were interacting with all the Avengers characters, like first with Thor, some great comedy moments with them, but then when they interact with Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and Tony, like the iconic scene of who is Gamora, where is Gamora, why is Gamora, and like the balance between them, and like Rocket and Thor having this great moment of being serious but also being funny at the same time. And so I never thought that the Guardians would be so integral in the Avengers movies, but they really stood out, interacting with all the characters that we watched throughout the phase 1, 2, and 3. So I have to shout out the Guardians for this.
Yeah, no, they were a fantastic element, and there's so much of the heart of this film, especially around Gamora with Thanos and going to Vormir and all that stuff. We get to see like the spirit of Red Skull in here as well at a certain point on Vormir. Like there was so much that was jam-packed into this film that the Guardians are a huge part of. And before we talk on a very specific Guardian moment, I just want to take a look at some of these comments. Did you see that popping in saying 3 legends live? Also says that absolutely fantastic to see YK live, the English legend. D Movie Man also throwing some love out there for YK as well.
Appreciate you guys.
D Movie also saying that Thor's evolution was bananas. They definitely squandered that later on, but I appreciated the journey for the most part. Yeah, we're definitely going to be a part of what we talk about in a little bit about the current state of the MCU. Chris Hemsworth actually came out recently, with an interview saying that he feels like he kind of became a parody of himself with the latest Thor film, and maybe went a little too far with the improv and the comedy. So definitely curious about your guys' thoughts as we go on. D Movie Man also saying that Avengers theme is always going to slap, which I definitely agree with, and that the way the audience went wild when Wakanda popped up on the screen. Yeah, and that's another great part. Is like last week we talked about Black Panther here on the channel with Rashad G reviews and Q reviews, and they came out the same year as this, so it was fresh. That hype, or we talked about the hype of Black Panther, what that meant to cinema at the time, what it meant to the Black community at the time, and just how big of a movie it became outside of an MCU film. And to have this movie come out later on in the year and feature those characters in such a big way later on was pretty amazing. Now we were talking about the Guardians though, and I have to ask, and Yusuf, I'll throw it to you this time first, but what are your thoughts on one of the biggest controversial moments in the film, which is Star-Lord smacking Thanos in the face after he finds out Gamora's been killed right at the worst time when they almost had the gauntlet off? Do you think the movie would have been different if they got the gauntlet off there? Or do you think it was still going to turn out the way that it did?
I feel like it would have turned out the same way. I mean, everybody would have done the same thing if they were in Star-Lord's position. They find out their love of their life was just killed. And so I don't blame Star-Lord for doing what he did. But I feel like even if they remove the gauntlet, Thanos still has that presence, still has that power. He would have been able to easily just take the gauntlet back. So in terms of controversy, I can see where people are coming from, but I feel like that would have been the right moment because of the build-up that they did in the previous two Guardians of the Galaxy movies with building their relationship. Even in the first part of this movie, when you had them, like when you had Gamora and Star-Lord discussing, like, she knows where the Soul Stone is, she needs him to do it. And even when they arrive at, I believe it was nowhere, and you had Star-Lord with the gun not wanting to shoot her, but then eventually does shoot her and bubbles come out because Thanos is messing with them. So they built it up for him to have that reaction. So I feel like it was justified.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point. What about you, Blacktastic? What are your thoughts on that? Because I also want to add in here too, is that it was kind of crazy when the movie came out. I remember there being like actual hate that Chris Pratt was getting on social media for what his character did. So what are your thoughts on all that, Blacktastic?
Yeah, man. The slap heard across the universe. Him and Will Smith got something in common. You gonna slap him now? If you write it on paper, it doesn't make sense, but when it plays out, it does make sense. Because you have to understand emotions. As a human, when you're in love with somebody and the love of your life has been taken from you, you're fearful. You're no longer scared of anybody. And common sense doesn't apply anymore. Emotions take over. And, the heart can. So I understand what happened. From a comic book standpoint, I see why people were pissed. But, man, you got to have controversy in order for the story to progress further. And, the Russo brothers made some decisions in this movie that was controversial a lot. You got the Hulk thing. Now you got this thing here going on. You're like, out of all the times, at this particular time, you had to do that. But if you take in consideration, the love of your life has been taken from you. And within an instant, you're a different human being all of a sudden. And so what was part of the plan goes out the window. And hey, it happens, man. Love is a dangerous game. It'll make you do foolish things.
Yeah, I mean, you guys both make good points. I remember seeing it myself and thinking like, God, that was so frustrating. But yeah, it totally made sense to me. And it blew my mind to go online later on and see people like blaming Chris Pratt for doing that as if he's the character, like he didn't get a script and show up and just shoot what was asked of him, That's always one of those funny things that you see people say or do around actors for roles, like that, especially for maybe a big franchise. We've seen it so much, and we've seen it get like gnarly. This one seemed more playful, but we've seen it get like incredibly visceral with certain actors, which always blows my mind. But yeah, I think it's really great to hear how much we all love the film and all the really great elements and the visuals and stuff like that. We talked about the Hulk, but Blacktastic, I'll throw it to you first this time. Maybe what's something that stands out to you outside of the Hulk as like a least favorite part of this movie, or is that really just your main negative?
No, my other negative would be as a technical thing. We all know now Josh Whedon is a douchebag. It came out. I didn't know what kind of person he was when I heard about what he did on the set of Justice League, how he treated Gal Gadot, my man, what's his name, Ray Fisher. He was borderline racist. I mean, this dude was a pig, and so we know that now. But when he did the Avengers and also Ultron, dude couldn't do no wrong. And I feel his style of filmmaking I like more than the Russo brothers. The way he incorporated shots, the banter. I thought his scripts were a little bit tighter when it came to the banter between the crew members of the Avengers. So when I seen this movie, the way the Russo brothers frame their shots, I'm not a particular fan of. I like Josh Whedon's better as far as the framing aspect of his movies. And the other thing I didn't like was Spider-Man. I just couldn't take him going to space, man. I was like, this brother belongs in Brooklyn, doing things on Earth, swinging on buildings and stuff. And I'm not a fan ever since the first Spider-Man movie, the suit, the Iron Man suit. It was too much. So it made Spider-Man even more than he always was before. But that was my other negative. When I was watching the film, I'm like, this is good. It feels like the Avengers, but aesthetically, the way it looked, I like Josh Whedon's vision better as far as the way he frames shots and the way he directs action. Because say what you want to say about the Age of Ultron, the Hulk Buster and the Hulk scene, man, that was incredible. And the way the villain talked, the dialogue, I thought was really, really good in that particular movie. This one, it started to go out of whack. You can tell by the way they was doing things, the slap held across the Hulk thing. And it seemed like a different person directed Civil War opposed to Infinity War. It was the same group of boys that did it, but it felt different. And my eyes couldn't get past the way they really got close up with their shots. And I was like, man, back up a little bit. Let me see the whole thing. So that was my other biggest downfall for this movie.
Hey, fair enough, man. I think you make some very interesting points there for sure. It's tough because there are things that they do that definitely take things to another direction. I personally was a fan of taking Spider-Man to space, but I could totally see where you're coming from, and I do think that part of what makes Spider-Man great is that he is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. That he stays in a local area. I like the iron suit, but I do think it's one of those things where like the just classic him in the red and blue tights, which I think is what we're going to be getting in the new one based on the way No Way Home ended. So we're going to go back to basics with Spider-Man, which I think is where he works, right? That's what we love about Spider-Man the most. If you play a Spider-Man video game, he's not going off to space either. He's staying in New York. It's all about swinging through the city and stuff like that. Like, you read the comics, you watch most of the stuff with Spider-Man. That is the identity, the setting, the backdrop that works for him the best. What about you, Yusuf? Anything that stands out as like a really big negative for you or something that just doesn't work for you outside of the Hulk?
I feel like my only nitpick was the Iron Spider suit. Like you mentioned, I don't mind him going to space because it kind of has to go with the story. Like they need to include him as part of the character. But I do prefer Spider-Man just with that red and blue suit, and just seeing him in the Iron Spider suit, it bugged me because I don't like that. And even for I don't mind the Spider-Man trilogy movie with him and John Watts, but what bugs me a lot is the suits that he gets. He's always getting these technical upgrades on the suits when I just feel like he just needs to stay with the basics, stay with the white and red, the red and blue suit, rather than having all these technical stuff on his suit. But I'm actually curious now. I'm going back and rewatching this movie just to see what Blacktastic was mentioning about the shots. I'm curious now to see what you were seeing when it comes to that now, because I might have to go back and rewatch it later today as well to see that.
I do know what you're talking about too, Blacktastic, because rewatching it, I remember there was some like up close, a lot of really up close shots on the characters. Not like where it's super, super up close, but it doesn't necessarily like give you the surroundings as much. And I do think a part of that leans into my biggest nitpicks, which are pretty minor gripes. Honestly, I love this movie. I think it's an amazing time. I think it's such a great payoff to the things that came before while also setting up what's to come. But yeah, outside of the Hulk, my biggest gripes would be some of the digital effects that just, tends to be a thing that sometimes ages movies more than anything. I actually just rewatched, and a video is coming soon, but I just rewatched Aliens, the sequel to Alien, directed by James Cameron. And I mean, the animatronic and practical effects used in that film. Yeah, I kept saying to my fiance, it was her first time watching it, but it was my first time watching it in many years, and my first time watching it in 4K. So I had only watched it back in the day. I used to watch it on TV all the time. I just hadn't seen it in a while. I remembered it well, but I hadn't seen any sort of like HD remaster of it. And I would looking over my fiance, like blown away at how high quality they were able to make the resolution of the actors. Everybody looked crystal clear for a movie that came out in the late 80s. And then you add on top of that this incredible practical effects of like the aliens and all the alien queen at the end. And I was just blown away at how amazing this movie still looks. It looks real, looks tangible, that movie came out decades ago. Whereas you look at something like Infinity War, and there are scenes where just, especially when they're like on Titan and they have all this green screen because they're on this planet, and all of the characters like Spider-Man or War Machine or Iron Man, their suits are all digital as well. They're using like mocap suits that have the suit on them versus them actually being in an actual like costume. And while I think that probably works efficiently in a lot of ways, as the years have gone on, there's just something about that green screen that makes it, the higher resolution the movies get, the more that those like green screens like kind of pop out, and you can just tell it's studio lighting, and it doesn't give that sense of like otherworldliness that you want from like, hey, I'm in space. But that's a pretty minor gripe in the grand scheme of it. It was just something that stood out to me. And again, having just watched Aliens just the other day, I was just like, you look at a movie like that and where practical just stands up. It's kind of a similar feeling to what I felt with the newest Mad Max. I enjoyed Furiosa a lot, but when you look at Fury Road from about 10 years ago now, so much of that was done practically, and it looks phenomenal. And the Furiosa even ends with shots of Fury Road that, in my opinion, looked better than the shots you saw in the movie. I liked how Furiosa looked, but there was so much green screen that it does take away from a little bit of that tangible element you want in a movie. But getting back to Infinity War, it's nice to hear you guys' negatives. It's nice to hear you guys' positives. One thing that we've been having a lot of fun with in all of these is that I think one thing we can all kind of agree on, and it seems to be a consensus for across most people, is the love we all had for the Marvel movies leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. There's a few in the mix that people are divisive on, but quite frankly, they're pretty minor ones now that people tend to look back on a little bit more fondly. Yusuf, I'll throw it off to you this time first, but what can you tell me about your thoughts of the MCU now? There's been a lot of criticism post Endgame. I think that there's undeniably been great installments like a No Way Home or Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, WandaVision, Loki, but there's been some other ones in the mix, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Echo, that maybe haven't landed with people as much. And Eternals is one of those movies as well. So Yusuf, what are your thoughts on the MCU in its current state, and what do you think has either been done wrong or right since Endgame?
I feel like my biggest gripe is they're throwing a lot of these characters that you genuinely don't know when you're going to see them next. They're like Falcon and Winter Soldier, Vision, for example, in WandaVision, that came out, I think, in 2020 or 2021 that year. And then 5 years later, we're going to be seeing Vision Quest, the follow-up to WandaVision. Similar with like Moon Knight, Eternals, She-Hulk. You don't know when these characters are going to show up again. And it's been now 5 years since Endgame. None of these characters have like even interacted with one another, had a movie together. So when the next Avengers movie comes out, you're going to have all these introductions to these characters that some of them haven't been written well. Like the issue, especially for like Disney Plus series, is that they're so rushed. 6 episodes, like Secret Invasion was a complete disaster because of the writing with that. They kill off like characters, spoiler alerts if you haven't seen it, but they kill off Maria Hill in that series, and it's just, there was no build up towards that, no nothing. It's just sort of was just thrown in there. Other like series is like Miss Marvel, I genuinely think is one of the better ones, but still a lot of issues with that. She-Hulk, honestly, I don't know what they were thinking with the writing with She-Hulk for that one. I'm pretty sure like I'm missing so many off the top of my head because there's been so many that have come out. But again, you don't know, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Doctor Strange. Even though Doctor Strange was a decent movie, they have announced there's going to be like a sequel to that, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Shang-Chi, we don't know when we're going to see him again. Like you mentioned, Thor, Love and Thunder, so much comedy in that, and they built up like the post-credit scene, but we don't even know when that's going to happen. So part of it, I know due to COVID, there was a lot of delays. There's been writer strike that have caused delays as well. But the problem is that I feel like there's no sense of direction with the future of Marvel. Like they knew what they were doing for phase 1, 2, and 3. Now they've had this whole multiverse saga where it doesn't even feel like it's been a multiverse saga. Like you've had a couple of movies here and there building up towards the multiverse, and then other movies are just, they're just introduced like standalone movies, which feels like, so it just feels like it's no sense of direction and just a mess with these characters that you don't know, you're not attached to them, and you don't know when they're going to come out, when you're going to see them again.
Right.
Yeah, no, you bring some really good points there, man. It's been I've been a big defender. If you watch my reviews, I tend to be more positive than negative on a lot of these things. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think, especially at the beginning, I was like, all right, cool, this is all going to ramp up to something just like it has in the past. But the sheer amount, if you were to look at a list that breaks down the various phases and how many installments are in each phase, the first phase only has like 4 or 5 movies in it, maybe. Second phase is a little bit longer, but also not drastically long. And when you look at like phase 4 and 5, I mean, they have just been packed with like TV shows, movies, and so much going on. And I think there's been really strong installments in the mix. Like I mentioned, No Way Home, Shang-Chi was a good one. I've really enjoyed what they've done with Loki. I really enjoyed Moon Knight. I enjoyed Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision. But yeah, there's been the Ms. Marvels, there's been the She-Hulks, there's been a show like Echo that came out at the beginning of this year that I know almost no one who watched. Like it's like an MCU project that I feel everybody just skipped. I watched it. I talked to a few people. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, hey, have you guys seen Echo? They're like, no, I still haven't gotten around to that. It's like the one, whereas there was a big phase in time with the MCU shows that even if people weren't excited for it, they would watch it. But Echo is just one of those that people just chose not to watch. Even though I haven't seen it, and with the post-credit scene, it seems like it's going to have some big connections moving forward. Blacktastic, throwing it over to you now. What are your thoughts on the MCU post-Endgame, and what do you think has kind of gone wrong, so to speak?
Well, it's all eternal. And unfortunately for Marvel and Disney, they purchased Fox, and that was a big thing. They wanted to get the rights to the X-Men and everything. That was big on their list. And then Netflix just started a monster, man, with the streaming wars. Everybody wanted to catch up to Netflix, and Disney being number one. And when you take the theater experience and water it down for TV, it loses all its magic and merit. And so I don't want to see Captain America on TV. I don't want to see Spider-Man on TV. They didn't, but these other characters they're trying to introduce, these side characters, just wasn't enough to keep me interested. And then the quality was lessened, the writing was lessened, and then of course the special effects cannot hold up to the theatrical experience. And after Endgame, where do you go? Iron Man is gone. Thor is now probably the most popular main one left. Captain America is now old Captain America. Hulk is now Professor Hulk. So the Avengers no longer exist as we know them, and we don't know who the Avengers are going to be. If there's an Avengers movie coming out next year, I don't know who's on the team, and the people that might be on the team that come from these streaming shows, I don't care for them. I like Miss Marvel. It was cute. It was well directed. I like the aesthetic of showing backstory of the Indian life living in New York, but I don't see that playing out on the big screen. They tried it with the Marvels. It didn't work, man. These poor actresses are being panned by the media, but there's a cinematic quality and there's a TV quality. When you try to intertwine them, and I don't want to have to do homework, man, to go watch a movie. Like, who is this? Did I have to go watch this to do that? When Marvel started doing that, they lost me, and they haven't gained their feet. And Phase 4, with Shang-Chi, was the best thing they did. I love that movie. Eternals, what the hell is that? Because you introduce something like, well, these people were here all this time. How come they never intervened? You have this black guy, man, you could have stopped slavery. It's so mass and so big. It's like, why do you need the Avengers now? They convoluted their own storyline. They're their own worst enemy. And they got their foot stuck in the mud and can't even get out, man. I feel sorry for them. And you have to go to a Fox property with Deadpool, hopefully to bring everything back, because Marvel, as it stands right now, there's no characters to look forward to. Moon Knight was cool. Like I said, Miss Marvel was cool, but they're not Iron Man, they're not Thor, Captain America, or Black Panther. And then they was dealt with a hand that was tough. Chad Boseman passed away. That was a big blow to the MCU. You can't replace that character with another actor right away. So sometimes you dealt with a bad hand. Then they made Thor fat and made him thin. Choices they make, man, it's just, what are you doing? It's not consistent. So again, they're their own worst enemy.
Yeah, no, I think we've all made some pretty good points here, and I think another thing too is it's that lack of vision that I think it bugs me a lot more as we go on, because Yusuf mentioned how Love and Thunder had like that post-credit scene with like Hercules, and with Natalie Portman being in that Valhalla with Heimdall. But there's been so many post-credit scenes now for so many things that haven't led to anything, and I think that's kind of the biggest disappointment I feel, is that there was a point in time where those post-credit scenes meant something, and you would go to the next movie or the second, maybe it wouldn't happen in the next movie, but the movie after that, there would be some sort of payoff or connection to that. They properly teased what was coming versus throwing out promises that they hope we can get to. But I think about something like Guardians 2, it showed Adam Warlock, and it wouldn't be till just last year. Was it last year? Yeah, just last year that we got Adam Warlock in a movie, so long after the events of Guardians 2. Things like I talked about it on one of these previous streams, but when I did the Doctor Strange video recently, the post-credit scene for that shows Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, Mordo, kind of turning evil. And while he is an antagonist of sorts in the sequel, it's an alternate multiverse version. So we never really got payoff on that Mordo from the original film. And there's been several instances of stuff like that where we have post-credit scenes that don't seem to be going somewhere, and I think it's pretty disheartening. But speaking on post-credit scenes now, and to bring it back to Infinity War now, this one ended, of course, with the post-credit scene of the tease for Captain Marvel, and of course got people really excited. And then the movie came out, it made over $1 billion. Of course, I think a lot of reasons being due to the success of Infinity War and the hype for Endgame. A question I'll throw to you this time first, Blacktastic, is what are your thoughts on having squeezed Captain Marvel in between Infinity War and Endgame? Do you think it would have been better to have just had Captain Marvel come out before Infinity War and then give us Infinity War straight into Endgame? Or do you think it was a better move to have a movie in the middle? And technically, actually, we also had Ant-Man and the Wasp in between as well. So we had 2 whole Marvel movies before we got Endgame. So I guess I'll throw that in the mix too. What are your thoughts on all of that, of having 2 separate movies come out in between Thanos killing everybody, and then the finale?
Yeah, I think from a standpoint, they should have been placed differently at a different time. But if you're Disney and you look at the money of it, Wasp, Ant-Man, decent amount of money, and no one knew Captain Marvel was going to blow up like that. No one knew. I didn't particularly was crazy about it. I love Brie Larson. I wanted her to be a superhero. and I thought she did a pretty good job. Samuel L. Jackson was hilarious in that movie, but it felt weird because it kind of shoehorned in there really, really quick. And I'm like, okay, everybody else has this journey, and they just throw this movie out there, and already she's like in the Avengers and coming there to wreck shop. So from a money standpoint, I know why they did it, because they was on the road. $1 billion. I mean, Ant-Man was the only thing that wasn't making it $1 billion. So, but from a standpoint of a fan, I thought it was misplaced. They probably should have had those movies come out at a different time. But I get it. It's all about money in the end, and it's not about the fans.
Yeah, I think it definitely was a money choice to have people just like clawing for more Marvel after Infinity War, and put out these 2 movies on, lesser known characters, in the grand scheme of things. Ant-Man and the Wasp were pretty popular in comparison to Captain Marvel, at least as they were OG Avengers characters in the comics back in the day. But yeah, they didn't really have that mainstay in mainstream the same way. What about you, Yusuf? Any thoughts on the release schedule, having 2 different movies come out in between Infinity War and Endgame?
Yeah, like Blacktastic said, from a business standpoint, I thought it was really, really smart to do it, because people are going to go watch it. You've made $1 billion from that. So they made the right choice by releasing it in between it. But critically, and from like a, I guess, customer standpoint, it was really confusing, because like I mentioned, I didn't watch Infinity War, unfortunately, when it first came out, but I rewatched it like a couple of days before Endgame. But then I watched Captain Marvel right after, and I was so confused, because this movie took place way before, like, I think chronologically is like in the 90s. And so you're going in there, you're expecting something that's going to be related to Infinity War and Endgame, like that kind of timeline. And it's like completely like a U-turn when it comes to that. And then the frustrating thing is that with this movie taking place in the 90s, like that's where we see her. So you don't see her, like, where has she been for the last like 10, 20 years in that. So I feel like that really hurt the actress and the character, because she's coming in Endgame, and I'm sure you're going to discuss it when you do your live stream about Endgame, but like her character kind of rubbed people the wrong way with how she was with the other Avengers. So I feel like that hurt the character, because of, you don't really see her in that timeline from when she first debuted to Infinity War and Endgame. So that definitely hurt it. But yeah, from like a business standpoint, definitely a smart decision. Similar with Ant-Man, I feel like the only thing is, because of the post-credit scene sort of spoils what happens in Infinity War, because everybody gets dusted. I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why they wanted to have it in between, because it spoils what happens. But it's just completely random from the events from Infinity War, whatever happens there, and then all of a sudden you just got this random heist movie in the middle of all of this taking place in San Francisco that has nothing to do with what happened in Infinity War. So you're kind of like, okay, what's happening here? So business-wise, good decision. Fan-wise, not that great.
Yeah. I mean, you guys both brought up good points, that they kind of they take the timeline back. I'm sorry, Blacktastic, were you going to say something there?
No, and an interesting thing too, during this time, you got to remember the whole woke thing was being a big topic in theaters and also in Hollywood. So Ant-Man and the Wasp had a big role, made the female audience happy. You can bring your little girls or daughters to the movie. And then you also had Miss Marvel, basically the female Superman, And so they're trying to get that female demographic to also come to the theater, but they were already coming before. You still had great, strong female leads, like you had Black Widow. You had some really good ones. And these were kind of shoehorned. The Wasp, she didn't do shit in part 3. And then, come on, we're not going to talk about the Marvels. Man, you didn't characters, man. The whole Hollywood woke women need to be in the limelight more, to be up front. I think Disney is always on the front end of trying to be the first to do something great. And that was really the beginning of the end of this whole thing falling out of control. Like you said, timeline don't make sense. And I'm like, wow. Then you had all the discussions. Did she put butt pads in her uniform to make her butt look bigger? But it got out of whack for a while there. It was like, damn. And I felt hard for, because she took some hits after doing that movie. Poor thing. But hey,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
hopefully,
crazy because she went from being like an Oscar-winning actress for, was it Room, and which is a great movie, great performance, and it's one of those things where like, yeah, you take on a role like this that has all these people who don't care about the prestige part of your career, you know, they are willing to dig into you for whatever. And yeah, we've seen that kind of be an unfortunate thing that's hit a lot of people, even the young actress who plays that plays Miss Marvel, Iman something. I can't remember what her last name is, but um, she's like very like if you watch any of her interviews or anything like that, she's just a young girl who's excited to be a part of it. And there's been so many people, like grown people, just ripping into this young girl just because they didn't like her show or they didn't like her whatever her dynamic in the MCU. But you know, for me as a fan of the comics, like that she plays the character very well. Like she embodies who and what the character is. And so, yeah, it is pretty wild to see the varying degrees that a lot of these actors and actresses have gotten heat. And yeah, you know, going back on the thing with Disney, well, I think that they've made some smart choices in like the idea of inclusivity. There are times where it's undeniable that it seems very forced or it feels very you know, like, hey, look what we did. And yeah, I think that there was definitely a lot of that going on at that time for sure. But yeah, it's nice to hear that we all kind of have a similar thought on like the weird choice, but understanding the weird choice of having these two movies come out in the middle. But I think at the end of the day, what's amazing is that we all love this movie, and it would lead into one of the probably the greatest finales of all time. And there's really not a lot of other franchises that have been able to do something like this. You know, even my favorite franchise of all time, Star Wars, I'll sing its praises all day, but it's undeniable that because the movies have come out decades apart and there's all this different storytelling that's super disconnected sometimes, it has kind of created a world where that consistency of sitting down and binging a bunch of movies isn't really there. Outside of the MCU, I'd say the Harry Potter movies in their lineup to Deathly Hallows nailed it the best. Outside of that, in terms of keeping the same cast and flowing the story. But Infinity War and Endgame were able to achieve something that just really hadn't been done. Really quickly, I looked at some of these comments. What the Gym is in here saying, "Hey guys, this is my all-time favorite superhero film and one of my favorite films in general." Yeah, definitely a great one. Alden Tuttle saying this movie came out the year I graduated and I loved it. It's definitely in my top 5 MCU films, and I will always remember it because it was the day I went with my oldest cousin, and that they said I couldn't sing. Says I'm not a great singer, but I'm decent enough. He also mentioned that he thought Echo was better. Which, you know, I enjoyed Echo. I wasn't crazy about it. I don't know. Have you guys seen Echo?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like one of those that just people, it just came and went. Nobody really, what's it called? Nobody really talked about it all that much. And seemed like a pretty forgettable one that came out in the mix. Now moving forward with future Avengers films, you know, the reality is we have two double part movies that are coming out with. I'm assuming the names may change given all the stuff with Jonathan Majors, but we have obviously the Kang Dynasty coming down the way and Secret Wars. What characters do you guys want to see in the Avengers? Blacktastic, I'll start with you. Are there any of the characters from the old lineup and characters from the new lineup that of characters that you are excited to see team up in the movie? Or there may be a few that kind of stand out to you, like I don't care if they show up at all. Where's your head at with that?
Well, is Black Panther 3 going to come out before Kang Dynasty? Do you know?
I don't know. I would have to look at the lineup. I'm not sure.
Because that's a big part for me, having a full-grown Black back in the mix. I think he can be the face of the new Avengers that we can all rally behind if they get a really good actor. But some years got to go by because, as you know, in Wakanda Forever, he's a little kid. He's got to grow into the role. So if Black Panther is back, I'm on board. War Machine, want him to have a bigger role. Captain America, the new Captain America with Falcon, that's going to be kind of a weird mix because we all miss Chris Evans as Captain America, and his sidekick was always cool, but can he fill those shoes? We'll find out with Captain America 4. And so if you got Black Panther, War Machine having a bigger role, and then you have the new Captain America, you got to fill in the blanks. Thor will be back, so that would be good. But is Brie Larson ever going to play Miss Marvel again? I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm not Miss Marvel, but Captain Marvel again.
Right.
Little girl, is she coming back to play Miss Marvel? What's the bow and arrow dude? What's his name? Hawkeye, the girl from the Hawkeye show. Is she gonna be the Young Avengers? I'm confused. You got the Young Avengers, you got the other Avengers. Spider-Man might be the only thing to pull it all together. He might be the best Avenger out of all of them, him and Thor. But everybody else, I can't think of anybody else that I like. And who are the really good females besides Captain Marvel to be part of these Avengers team? I don't know. I guess the sister of Black Widow, what's her name?
Yelena.
Yeah, I really like her. She could be part of the Avengers. So they got to figure it out quick, because Disney's quick to put out these names and titles. And we don't have an Avengers team even formed yet. So it's kind of like quick panic button for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, kind of like Yusuf was saying earlier, where a lot of these characters haven't been introduced to one another. Shang-Chi at the end of his movie meets Wong, and we see him in that post-credit scene with Captain Marvel and Mark Ruffalo's, like just as Bruce Banner. But nothing has come of that scene ever again. And that was one of the things that I talked about in previous videos that we've been doing the last few weeks when it comes down to something like the Eternals. The movie ended with the corpse of a celestial being sticking out of the earth, and it's like almost not been referenced at all. Now there has been some stuff coming out in the last couple of days that Brave New World, the fourth Captain America film, when you mentioned it, it reminded me that film will be addressing the celestial body sticking out of the earth. So finally, but it's been a few years, and it's kind of crazy that it's taken this long to get anybody in any of these films to respond to that. And yeah, who's the team going to be is interesting, because now we have characters being introduced as main characters that are going to be big parts of other movies. So you mentioned Yelena, but will she be a part of the Avengers? Who knows? Because she's going to be a big member of that upcoming movie Thunderbolts that's coming out, which is like kind of like an anti-hero team that's coming out. Has like a Zemo in it, and I believe Ghost from Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp. You also have like the Red Guardian in there, David Harbour's character, and then a U.S. agent as well. So you have like, and I think Bucky's in that movie as well. So, kind of this anti-hero team that you got going on. So yeah, it does beg the question of who is going to be the Avengers. Me personally, I'll say real quick before I throw it off to Yusuf, for sure, I think the main players, like the main three, the Captain America, Hulk, and Thor kind of dynamic, I think is going to be Thor, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man personally. If they bring Black Panther back by doing a time jump and having the little boy grow up, then I could totally see him being one of those top three instead, maybe instead of Spider-Man or instead of Doctor Strange. But outside of that, if Shuri continues on as the Black Panther, I can definitely see her being part of the team, but I don't think she'll be one of the top three. I think it's possible we might see like Namor show up from the second from Wakanda Forever, maybe reappearing at some point as a helper along the way. I'm assuming we'll see. I'm hoping, we'll definitely see. It's weird because Falcon is now Captain America, but I don't think he'll hold the same central leader position that Captain America held when Chris Evans was the character. So I think it's going to be one of those situations more where he'll be a part of the team, but he won't be like that center poster kind of character. I could be wrong. They could still go with that approach, which I wouldn't be opposed to, but I have a feeling it'll probably be more of the characters that maybe have that bigger face right now in terms of characters. Moon Knight is a character I would love to see in the Avengers. I think the dynamic of his multiple personalities would make for a lot of fun. I'm hoping that Deadpool will eventually be a part of the Avengers. How they'll be able to capture the tone of a movie like this, Infinity War or Endgame, with his fourth wall breaking, I think is going to be very challenging. So I would not want to be the writers for that movie. I would not want that challenge on my plate. But outside of those, I'm suspecting we'll see everybody else, right? Like I'm hoping we'll see She-Hulk, a pop-up, Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, even what's her name? Having a brain fart right now. Rambo, who's obviously at the end in the other world with the X-Men. So the question too is, are we going to see X-Men show up in the Avengers films? Are we going to have a whole X-Men world mixed with the Avengers and all these characters that have already not met together, as well as characters that are yet to be introduced? there's a lot going on. You know, it's really tough. What about you? Were you gonna say something, Blacktastic?
Who's that female that was introduced in Wakanda Forever, like the female Iron Man? What's her name?
Yeah, Ironheart, and she's got her own show coming out too as well.
Yeah, you got her as well.
Yeah, she probably will play a part in the Avengers as well. Yeah, it's going to be a ginormous team this time, and then you have the Guardians, the new version of the Guardians. You know, and they even though Chris Pratt's, you know, not Star-Lord at the moment, he went back to Earth. The movie does end by saying Chris Pratt will return as Star-Lord. So it's inevitable that the Guardians will be in the mix of the whole thing as well. But what about you, Yusuf? Do you have like kind of a dream team in your head for the Avengers, or maybe there are any characters you think we may or may not see again?
Yeah, because I'm seeing mixed reports when it comes to like the Avengers movies. Like the reports are that the next Avengers movie, Avengers 5, is going to be like a more grounded movie, and then the next one is going to be sort of a Secret Wars Part 1, Part 2 type of movie. So it's just a lot of like confusion when it comes to these Avengers movies, because if they are going to go through that route, like the grounded ones, you can also have like Daredevil, because he's having his own show next year. So like Daredevil could be showing up. But I feel like the big standouts would be Thor, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man as the ones that are going to lead it, especially because you don't know when the Black Panther 3 is going to be coming out. And then if they are going to do Secret Wars later on, you feel like that's going to lean more towards like the older characters like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and these Deadpool, Wolverine, like the Fox Universe characters. That's probably going to be showing up. So you have so many new characters that you're being introduced in the Marvel, but Secret Wars feels like it's leading up for all these older characters that are not part of the MCU that are going to be showing up. So I don't know, it just seems like a confusing mess with these Avengers movies as well, because you guys mentioned so many like characters that I'm pretty sure we've missed some characters that are part of Phase 4 and 5, like Ant-Man 2. I don't even know if he'll be showing up, because they even mentioned, like, I can't remember which character it was that mentioned that they wish they got killed off in Ant-Man 3. So it just seems like there's just no direction, and you can honestly place a bet or Russian roulette on who's going to show up in the next Avengers movies.
Yeah, no, it is a lot. And as we all three of us have been talking about it, when you guys have been saying my mind is going off to these other characters, and you make a good point, Yusuf, that Secret Wars in the comics is a huge multiversal event. So if that's supposed to be the end of the saga, yeah, there is a possibility that we go and we see a movie that has like every cameo known to man. You know, that there's been so many rumors that have come out of Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield coming back, maybe even Ben Affleck as Daredevil, maybe even Nick Cage as Ghost Rider, which would be crazy if they can pull it off. But that on top of all the other characters that are already introduced in the MCU, pre-existing and new, it's pretty insane. And really quickly, as we come to the end of this, I think here's a really good question as for the future. They just recently announced that Giancarlo Esposito is going to be playing a character in Captain America 3. YKReviews says that Doctor Doom would be dope, just saying. Yeah, so they just announced that, I think, yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, it came out. And there's been a lot of rumors that he might play the MCU's version of Professor Xavier, which I personally love the concept of. I think he'd play an incredible Professor Xavier. But Doctor Doom and Norman Osborn is another one I've been hearing a lot of people speculate. Blacktastic, I'll throw it over to you first. Any thoughts on Giancarlo Esposito's role in the MCU and who you'd like to see him play?
The MCU is in good hands with him being signed on. That dude can do anything. He is marvelous. He's a great villain. He's also a great protagonist. You know, whatever role he is that's secretly being shoehorned in, because after he do this appearance in his next movie, he's getting his own TV series as well.
Right.
So do we see a villain having his own TV series, or do we see a good guy having his own TV series? So I'm not really sure. But hey, the MCU is in good hands. And I think in 2 months from now, we'll have a better understanding the state of the MCU after Deadpool and Wolverine comes out, because it's supposed to reset everything, right? So with that said and done, when that movie comes out, we might be having a different conversation by the time that takes place. But yeah, that guy is a world-class actor, you know, and you know me. Anthony. We go back to my Spike Lee days. Spike Lee discovered that brother, and
Right.
To see him grow to be part of Star Wars, now part of the MCU, and man, it's a dream come true for me to see that actor come from here all the way up to here, and he's respected by everyone. So
Right.
MCU's in good hands with him being on board.
Yeah, I agree, man. He's an incredible actor. I was first introduced to him, I think, like a lot of people, in Breaking Bad because he had that huge success role in that. But then our buddy Rashad G Reviews put me on to a bunch of Spike Lee joints I hadn't seen, most notably Do the Right Thing, which is where then I got to kind of see him. I was surprised. I didn't know he was in that movie. This was a few years ago now. It was during the pandemic. And I just remember being like, hey, this is the guy from Breaking Bad and The Mandalorian at the time. I had already seen him in that. But yeah, since then he's gone on to be in so many things. Recently saw him in that the vampire ballerina movie Abigail. He was in that as well. And he's just such a well-rounded actor. I actually got to meet him earlier this year at MegaCon as well. It's for one of those quick, very brief photo ops where they kind of like shuffle you in and shuffle you out really fast. But he was nice, and he felt like his characters when I met him. He was very like put together and very like stoic. But it was nice. It was nice to meet him for sure. Yusuf, what about you in terms of everything that we're talking about here?
I love Giancarlo Esposito. Like you, Anthony, I was introduced to him as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad, but then just been a fan of him ever since. And I actually just checked out his recent show this year that came out, was Parish, and it's a really, really good show. Honestly, highly recommend it. But he really stands out in that show. He's such a great performer, such a great actor. But when it comes to like the MCU side of things here, I actually last night was seeing that he's actually filming in the new Captain America movie. Like they're doing reshoots right now, so he's included in that movie. And I think he's not playing like a villain we were all expecting. I think he's like there's set photos coming out with him with like blue hair and just like these knives and axe attached to him. So I can't guess what he is, what character he's playing. I'm leaning more towards like one of those X-Men villains, like the ones that created the Sentinels. I think that could be it, but everybody's just pure speculation. So it's not like a villain that everybody's expecting, like Doctor Doom or anything like that. But if you check out the set photos, you see him, how he looks, and it's not what people were expecting, which I'm kind of a little bit disappointed. But if he's getting his own show, I know he's going to kill it regardless. But I just hope he's not one of those throwaway villains, because I know he wanted to just play a good guy in the MCU. He came out and said that he doesn't want to always be looked at as like a villain, like the same character. He wants to be a good guy. So I'm guessing that they didn't want to do that. They wanted him to be a villain, but I just don't want it to be like this throwaway villain, because he's such a great actor and he deserves more if he's going to be in the MCU.
Yeah, I agree. I actually haven't seen those set photos, so I'm gonna have to look them up after this chat here. I just saw like the stuff coming out that he was gonna be in the new Captain America. Either way, I think that to echo Blacktastic, I think definitely the MCU is in good hands. Having him be a part of it to any degree, I think he's a fantastic actor, and he usually brings so much gravitas. But hey, guys, as we come to the end of this, it's been a blast talking some Marvel with you guys, talking about Infinity War, the good, the bad, our favorites, our least favorite things, and ultimately, it's nice to talk about a movie that is celebrated and that we all enjoy. I think there's only so much we can add to the conversation all these years later, but the fun part about these has been the back half discussion, being able to discuss the state of the MCU, how it's all affecting everybody differently. And ultimately, I think it comes from a place of passion for all of us, because these are all movies that we've all been watching for so long now that we just want to see it be able to succeed the way that it has in the past. Yusuf, I'll throw it off to you first this time. Anything you want to plug on your channel, anything anybody should look out for over there on your in terms of content and different things like that before we wrap things up?
Most likely, sorry, I wasn't expecting.
My bad. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Going to be mostly a couple of shows and movies coming out that I'm going to be planning on doing. Like I do the weekly entertainment news videos every single week, talking about movie news and TV news and stuff like that. But probably going to be doing a Bad Boys tier ranking video. Going to be reviewing Inside Out 2, only just because it's going to be the first time my son is going to go to the cinema. So just that experience.
Nice.
Probably going to be doing, because I know The Bear is coming out this month, so I've never seen it, so I'm probably going to do like a binge watching video for The Bear. So those, most likely those are going to be the ones to keep an eye out on.
Nice, man. Awesome. Yeah, guys, for sure. Before I throw it off to Blacktastic as well, I just want to state, as anytime, you guys can find the links to both of my guests straight to their channels down below in the description box. Definitely go give them some love and let them know I sent you. But Blacktastic, anything you want to plug over on your channel, my friend?
Basically, man, I'm just going off the strength of releasing my latest short film, The Lookout. I'm in the middle of doing press junkets. Reviews are coming out. And I have started pre-production on the third installment of the Werewolf series. I just finished casting last week, so you'll see some more YouTubers that you know in this film as well. But pre-production has started on that, and nothing new really. I'm just riding the wave of enjoying the reception of The Lookout.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And congrats on The Lookout. Like I said, I was a little bit late to it, but I watched it this morning, and man, it's just been awesome to just see the progression. When I first met you, nearly 5 years ago now, and I've seen, several of your movies now, and all at different lengths, all different topics, horror, more drama, this time more of a heist kind of thing. Like you've always tried to do something new and different. So definitely go and check out The Lookout, everybody. It's over on his channel. I think it's only like several videos down too, so it won't be too hard to find there. But yeah, guys, big thanks to both of these guys. As far as me, I expect the review out soon. Hopefully, I know I made a post about it not too long ago, but I will be having the final installment in the Harry Potter franchise with my buddy Rashad Reviews, which has been just a roller coaster of emotions, man. As a huge fan of the Harry Potter films, and Rashad not being a huge fan, I think what's made those videos so much fun to do is seeing how much people have actually enjoyed the stark difference between our personalities and our takes on the movies. Every time one of those videos are posted, almost all of the comments are about Rashad. So I'm grateful that I asked him to join me, just even though he doesn't like the movies and I love them. His humor around his discussion on them and his inability to pronounce people's names correctly in the movies are just absolutely fantastic. So that's going to be coming out. Hopefully I can get it out later tonight or tomorrow. We'll see.
Ooh.
Outside of that as well, review for Aliens, directed by James Cameron, as I continue going through the Aliens movies leading up to Alien Romulus in a few months. On top of that, I will also be seeing tonight, I will be watching the first 4 episodes that I got early for The Acolyte, the new Star Wars show. I will have the review for the first 4 episodes up when the embargo lifts at noon on Tuesday. Tuesday is the day that the first 2 episodes drop. So I'm very grateful to Disney for sending me over the first 4 episodes to check out. And outside of that, on Monday, I will be seeing Bad Boys, whatever this one's called, Bad Boys 4.
Ride or Die.
Yeah,
Ride or Die, right. I couldn't remember what the subtitle was. So yeah, Ride or Die. I'll be watching that early on Monday with the review up on Tuesday as well. So a lot of videos coming very soon. And then next week, I'll have 2 new guests on as we discuss Ant-Man and the Wasp, the sequel to Ant-Man. So a big thanks again to everybody who watched. Go give these guys some love. 2 talented YouTubers with tons of great content over there. And again, their links are down below. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Later, guys.
Appreciate it.